So welcome back to ATRE. Today we're here in a very sunny, hot. Central London. I'm joined by Edward Freeman, founder at Rare Origins. So firstly, welcome onto the channel.
Thank you very much for having me, Patrick.
So we met a couple of weeks ago only at that Savills breakfast event, and you asked a very interesting question about data centers, and I was like, I need to speak to this guy afterwards. Brief conversation. I was like, right, you're the right guy for this podcast. So to begin with, what do you do?
What do I do? Thank you for having me. I just shout out to all the young men and women out there who are just kicking down doors and demanding to get airtime and attention, because I think you're doing a really good job of that. What do I do? I had all sorts of notes prepared, but here we go. We'll just sort of make up as we go along. Rare Origins is, it's a weird thing. It's like, describe it as a sort of single family holding company / startup. Rare Origins itself is a sort of catalyst layer, is how I begin to think of it, or like an origination engine, hence the name Rare Origins. And think of it as like micro PE. Basically, we go around looking for things we can add value to, problems we can solve, systems we can establish in order to hopefully generate a bit more money at the end than the tax man has taken.
Nice.
Yeah, something like that.
But that's not what you've always been doing. So we'll go back a few years now to your dog walking company. Was that your first venture that you did by yourself?
I think I kind of always had an entrepreneurial streak. I remember getting in trouble at school once upon a time for sneaking out of school to buy donuts and then sell them on to people. Okay. But yeah, I think London Dog Walking Company was kind of the first proper go at having a small business that I undertook, and it was great. In brief, I started working at a dog walking company temporarily, spent about 3 months there, and I was looking at it, I was thinking, kind of back then, the industry was very like bubble letters, pause for you, kind of quite kitschy. And I just thought some of the clients that we were dealing with for a more professional service would probably pay considerably more than they were paying. So after about 3 months, it was a great company I worked for, great entrepreneur. But after a few months, I went my own way and started the London Dog Walking Company. And the idea was I'd kind of start walking dogs, maybe get a van, try and get to a full roster of 6 to 8 dogs by the end of I think a 6-month period. And I think by 6 months in, we already had 2 vans and we were looking for the third. And it worked really well. We were one of the first companies, I think, in London to do a premium price point, premium brand dog walking. It was a great first business. It taught me a lot about, customer comes first, always.
Yeah.
It was like bespoke concierge services for dogs. So the clients were demanding, but they were good payers as long as you did your job.
Yeah.
So a lot about customer service, building a small team, running a small business, putting some systems in place. So lots of valuable lessons there.
Yeah, and then there was a switch from dog walking into the sort of, you say, property world.
Yeah.
So in your business, do you have a full property focus, or is it split off into little subsections? Sorry.
Yeah, property is 90% of our allocated capital, and it's probably about the same in terms of our attention, our bandwidth, certainly my bandwidth. Like I started sort of getting at is what I'm trying to build is a permanent capital vehicle rather than building a business to sell, rather than building a business to throw off dividends. I'm just excited by the idea of building a group of companies where they're all synergizing, the flywheel is turning, lessons learned in one immediately translate to ROI in all the others, efficiencies of scale. Kind of the vision is of like a very small tech-enabled team operating at a kind of institutional grade. But it's early days and we're young and we're still kind of building the foundations.
So what sort of caused that switch for you?
Well, property was always in my blood. I remember I remember when I was about five years old. My dad was a developer, and I remember when I was about 5 years old, he was kind of on his hands and knees on the living room floor with a master plan, kind of scratching out his design and moving a fountain around. I just grew up, it's in my blood. I've grown up around it. I kind of inherited an earned secret, so to speak. I can't remember who said it, but one of the great ways to make money is get yourself an earned secret and then sweat it for 20 years. And I kind of just was raised steeped in this stuff. But I think also, there's another element. I think I got cocky when I sold the London Dog Walking Company for not a lot of money. But I think it was hubris. I think I was a young man and I had a go at something and it had gone really, really well. And I sort of thought, right, I'm ready for the big leagues now. So let me go and do something, let me go make my mark on the world. And I've been suffering for my hubris, as one does, ever since. I think the third element, it was conscious. I remember, because it wasn't direct into property. I had an import-export ceramic business for a bit, learned some lessons there about retail and minimum efficient scale. That was really where I learned about minimum efficient scale. I did some film production, like music videos and advertisements for a bit. And I thought, but when I came to property, I'd always been around it. And then I thought, basically entrepreneurs get paid, in theory, for solving a really big, ugly problem. And I think the great problem of 21st century UK is the productivity crisis, which is most manifest in the fact that we can't build the things we need to build. We can't build the homes, the railways, the airports, the schools, the hospitals. It's a wicked problem. There's no simple answer to it. Lots of people think there is. I don't think that there's an easy answer. But I thought, let me go and try and work on that, see if I can contribute to a solution, and hopefully I make a lot of money doing it.
Nice.
That was how I got into property.
Okay. And then what's your niche now with Rare Origins? Is what you just mentioned with the, your dog walking had that high quality which no one else had. Now it's in time for the Rare Origins.
Okay. So, well, I guess this is a scoop. This is a scoop for you. This will be the sort of the first time I talk about it openly. I mean, someone else said, again, I never know who I'm quoting, but someone wise said, you never build the business you think you're building. And it's kind of the entrepreneur's job to occasionally step back and say, what have I actually got here? What can I leverage? What have I built? What is working? And I think because we've done some kind of angel / micro VC investing as micro dots on the cap table, and we've also done some kind of more like mini PE lead investor activity, taking a substantial stake in the company and then helping out, like operationally with finance or go-to-market or operations. We've also been managing, while we've been doing our first joint venture in West Hampstead, which when it's done will be 16 flats, some renovated and some new build. We've also been managing that estate and sort of sweating those assets. So we've got a very broad exposure for quite a young company. And so when I was thinking about like, well, what do we want to do next? Development is extremely hard right now. We all know that. As an entrepreneur, I keep saying as an entrepreneur, you put me onto it because you were like, you're the entrepreneur, so you talk about that stuff. Again, I'm 50-50. Like what I love is the property, first and foremost, because I want to solve that big problem. But in good conscience, I can't devote the best years of my career to trying to be a property developer, because there's a very, very large part of me that says it's a poor use of my time and effort. Why, you want to ride the wave. Why are you fighting the headwinds? So because I don't want to focus exclusively on it, but I love it very much and I want to continue to apply myself to it. And because one thing that we've done over the last few years is quite a lot of investing in and assisting operationally with businesses, what we want to do next is we want to go and look for a business for sale, Possibly it's not for sale yet, but we want to go find a decent business, not a turnaround story, a decent business with an older director or maybe 2 directors, owners. They've been trading at least 15 years. They haven't necessarily kept up with the times. They haven't modernized, operationalized. They haven't taken full advantage of how much the go-to-market ecosystem has changed. They're not up for this AI thing that's coming. Like, they're not up for that amount of work. They might not have succession in place with certain people who won't be named and sort of certain tax situations that might be occurring. Quite a lot of people will be looking for an exit. And so what we would like to do is find a business like that with some underlying real estate, preferably one which also has synergies with our group. Okay. So that's like our kind of shopping list, our buy box. And obviously we're not going to find something that ticks all the boxes, but if we can stack enough of those edges, kind of go into the business as a majority owner, but with some kind of vendor finance while they hand it over to us in a nice, clean stabilization and exit period for them. And then go to work, like really try and juice revenue, try and find some efficiencies, modernize the company. And then the whole thing is execute, and achieve some kind of multiple expansion over a 2-3 year period, maybe by a bit more M&A, or maybe by some kind of aggregation roll-up type thing. And all the while, the idea here is that there's some underlying real estate that hopefully wasn't fully priced in the deal, and maybe we can turn our skills to that at the same time.
Nice.
So it's a kind of dual value creation strategy. I mean, it's early days. We're still kind of firming it up and beginning to look for what's for sale, and start talking to investors to see if they back the thesis and if they back us. But I back us. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, so as an entrepreneur, what's that mindset that you need to have to be successful in what you do?
Right. I guess you need to be a generalist. Your success will, to a very large extent, depend on specialists, but I think you need to be a generalist. You need to find the value at the intersection rather than just going deep on one thing, because if you're going deep on one thing, it's price competed down. Whereas when you find some combination of factors, you can maybe start, I don't know, it gets exciting. The other thing I think is, I was talking to someone about this the other day. So there's this weird contradiction inherent in us, which is you kind of have to be delusional, because the stats don't lie. Your chances of making it big as an entrepreneur aren't great, especially in this country at the moment. Well, compared with, say, America. So you have to be kind of wildly delusional to have the big dream, but then you also have to be like intensely paranoid. You have to assume, I think, and others would disagree, but I think you have to kind of assume that the worst will happen, Murphy's Law, kind of assume that everyone will let you down if you let them. And it's the leaders or the entrepreneur's job is to kind of do the training, hire the right people, do the training, give them the right tools, and put systems in place so that people don't make the same mistakes twice, I guess. And so kind of, only the paranoid survive, but also only the wildly delusional succeed. So you have to balance that, and it's.
How has it been so far? Has it been a big challenge of yours? Probably the biggest challenge so far in your life, would you say?
I think the biggest challenge is being an amazing husband and father and son and friend. I think the biggest challenge is just to be like a really stand-up guy. And, but yeah, I mean, everything with Rare Origins, especially our new build in West Hampstead Echo House, which has been a bit of a bin fire, it's been the hardest thing I've done professionally, for sure. It's really but then I think, sometimes when I think, oh God, I want to chuck it all in, and then I think I've grown as a business person. I don't mean to sound arrogant, but I'm 10 times the business person I was even 2 years ago. Wow. I'm 30 times the business person I was 5 years ago. So I don't think I can necessarily continue that rate of improvement. But what I hope is that all of that scar tissue will now begin to pay some dividends.
There was a period of time where you had the London Dog Walking Company and Rare Origins. Is that correct?
No. When I sold the London Dog Walking Company, I didn't actually sell the company for a couple of reasons. I sold the brand and some of the assets to a competitor, and then I sold, because of my big heart, I split the client list in half and sold it to two of my employees at the time because they wanted to carry on. And so really I sold it to 3 people. And I didn't sell the company itself. So then the company kind of sat around being a bit dormant for a year or two, and then I used it for 1 or 2 other jobs, and then I rebranded it as Rare Origins when I really started originating a deal, when I really got going. Back in 2021 is when we started this first joint venture.
So that was straight out of COVID. What was the time like for you then?
Yeah, we had, so the first thing I ever did was the first property I ever did was before that. We did, first we did a narrow boat, and then we did a split level masonette in Camden. So that was kind of the way in, just getting my hands dirty rather than the kind of the family imparted big picture stuff. That was the nuts and bolts of it. I don't know, coming out of COVID, I'll tell you the truth. I'll tell you the truth. Yeah, doesn't make me sound smart, but I'll tell you the truth. I've watched the markets all my life. I studied political economy young. I mean, I told my dad we should buy Games Workshop shares when I was 7. And anyone who knows what Games Workshop has done in the last 30 years, they'll know he should have listened to me.
Yeah.
I do not have a chip on my shoulder about that. So I watched the markets and I thought, this Mickey Mouse show cannot continue. The ZERP era was profoundly damaging. That crisis of productivity that we have today, I think, is in large part because of cowardly politics and cloud cuckoo land money printing. And then COVID happened, and I think they like 3x the national debt. Don't quote me on that, someone fact check. But I think the national debt and the money printing had already been very extreme. And everyone had always said there's been no inflation, but you look at asset prices and there obviously had been. It just hadn't translated to consumer inflation because China were exporting deflation and globalization was in full swing and so on. But when COVID happened and they printed even more money and the debt went even higher and there still wasn't a crash, I think, or like at least there was a blip, wasn't there? There was a bit of a fall in the market and then it shot off again. And I sort of at that point, I capitulated, you know?
Yeah.
I capitulated and I said, okay, well, it's just going to keep going up and up and up, isn't it? So we deployed capital in September 2021 into West Hampstead, which I think history will eventually bottom out as the peak of the peak of the peak.
Okay.
The number one job in property, I think, one of the number one jobs, is you got to enter at the right basis.
Yeah.
If you pay too much going in, you spend a lot of time and effort just trying to salvage the situation. And I guess, I don't know, I oscillate on this, but I think we must have in some respects done a very good job overall, because despite everything we've been through over the last 5 years, or 4.5, despite entering, I think, at the peak, it's still okay. Like it's not good, but it's okay, considering it was our first scheme of any significance. We were a new team, and we've been very busy building a number of other operations at the same time. So in short, to answer your question, it was very, very exciting. I parachuted into property development at a level I hadn't earned. It's been a trial by fire. We had to learn a lot about a lot of things. The reason it worked, I think, for us, despite the hardship, is we had to do a lot. We had to do asset management. We had to manage the tenancies. We had to manage tenancies around renovations while getting planning for a new build and then delivering a new build. So, you know, for a lot of, that's kind of, a good established company would do one of those 5 things. Whereas a dumb young entrepreneur would be like, I'll just try and do it all as best I can. And so it's been a trial by fire, but we've learned a lot. And we probably got an okay price overall for that reason. So the moral of the story is sometimes you've got to go and find like that viper's nest of a problem, because that is maybe where the opportunity is.
So you didn't study a real estate degree or at all, really?
No.
So you came into Rare Origins. What is one of the benefits of you perhaps not studying that compared to someone who's been in the real estate world since school?
Oh, okay. You know, I was talking about specialists a minute ago. So the great thing about being a specialist is you get to like the edge of the human knowledge. If you're good, you get really deep subject matter expertise. And if you come up through an institution, and sometimes I wish I had, if you come up through an organization, you get great mentoring, you kind of get given things at like a healthy pace for you to adjust to, but also you get repetition. You get to do your reps on each thing that you're learning and get really good at those. And so that's all extremely good for the right kind of person. The downside is I think people run the risk of becoming institutionalized. You know, this is how we did it at this organization, so that's how it's done, rather than resorting to first principles. They're probably in general not as flexible or dynamic or like heads up, you know, kind of like pattern recognition or I don't know, risk awareness in general. You get this sometimes, not to disparage any consultants, but you do get this sometimes where an architect, for instance, will say, this is the best thing because it solves all of the architectural problems. And you say, cool, but that's 3 times more expensive than the budget.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think they can be a bit blinkered, they can be a bit institutionalized. And I guess the truth is it just wasn't me. I have, my attention span is not short, but it's like, it's got a short fuse, I guess. It's like, I can go, you know, I've gone all in on AI. I'm up till 2, I'm like an AI vampire. I'm up until 2 a.m. just fiddling around, playing with it. And when I first got into property, I learned a huge amount about the legals, the financials, planning, design, delivery, execution, the whole ecosystem. I think one of the things that I love is being the generalist and sort of trying to understand 80%, then going to find, the idea is to go find the specialist who does the last 20, which is the real 80,
right?
The execution bit. Yeah. I don't know. That's how I guess I think about it.
You just touched on it then with the AI side of things.
All right.
So what do you mean about just playing around with AI? What can people do themselves at home just to get used to it and probably get better at using these agents?
Okay. I will say this, again, not to sound arrogant, but this is something I'm proud of, and I'm more than aware of my limitations, my downsides. So let me be happy for a minute for something I've done right. I think, on the bleeding edge of what is commercially available for SME businesses in the UK. Like I've fallen behind a bit because I was away for a week, but I'm very deep in it, and I'm beginning to see some return on investment. Okay. My best piece of advice, I think, would just be play with it. Like where I started, I designed a board game once upon a time in my evenings, and I kind of hit a wall when I needed to go and spend like 20 grand on character art, and then Midjourney came out. And right. I just made a bunch of character art for all of my board game and made a box cover and all the rest of it. So that was the first experiment. And then I've always had a great big space opera novel, like Game of Thrones, but in space, in my head.
Okay.
And when ChatGPT first came out, I remember trying for a couple of evenings to make a go of that. Mm-hmm. And what all of that experimentation really teaches you is the limitations, because then when you're aware of the limitations, you know when something changes. And this isn't an original observation, but was it December? I think December last year, Opus 4.6 came out, and everyone immediately understood that the context window, the reasoning, it suddenly felt like you had a real thinking partner instead of a sounding board.
Yeah.
And then around the same time as that, a lot of MCPs began to come out, and that was like the brain suddenly started having hands. It was great having a really smart friend, but they couldn't do anything. And suddenly the MCPs arrived, and now it was just like, connect it, and now it can send emails for me, or now it can go into Xero and look up some finances for me, or whatever. And now it's getting, I don't know, it's not parabolic, but it's getting like the rate of acceleration is crazy. Unbelievable. Mm-hmm. Anyone who thinks it won't change the world, let me rephrase. It is, to my mind, it is a Promethean level event. It is greater than, it's on a par with finding fire or language rather than cars or electricity.
Okay. Interesting.
Everything is going to change now over the next 50 years. And I believe it's mostly going to change absolutely for the better. I think these advances in technology really give humanity a shot of like eliminating extreme poverty. Giving every child in the world a super patient, super personalized, endlessly knowledgeable tutor in their pocket. One of the best doctors in the world in every village in the world. Like, there are downsides, of course, but against those kinds of upsides, I just think it's really cool.
Yeah.
I think it's really cool. Don't know if that answers the question or not.
No. Would you say it's a bubble then as well? Even if it does burst, are you saying that the benefits would easily outweigh the costs?
Again, not an original thought, but that's exactly right. That there are almost certainly kind of bubble dynamics with the valuations at the moment. Almost certainly.
Yeah.
I mean, Anthropic's revenue growth. I think they're. Again, don't quote me on this. I think I saw something that Anthropic is now on an ARR, an annual recurring revenue of multiple of like 20x or something.
Yes.
And I think it's the best tool. It's the best product I've ever used in my life. So would I pay 20x ARR for the best company I've ever discovered? Of course I would.
Okay.
So, but I think but that's that's just one piece of it. I think there are bubble characteristics in the valuations, but I think unlike the tulip mania, unlike the South China Sea bubble, there is this is more like the railway bubble. There is underlying infrastructure that humanity will benefit from. Even if 90% of every player in the industry went bust overnight, the other 10% would pick up all the infrastructure for pennies on the pound or cents on the dollar, and they'd be off to the races. Those kind of the core surviving operators would be positioned to just unleash unholy productivity gains.
I agree.
Well, then there is this question of, you can build the railways and they can last, I don't know, 50, 100 years. The question is all this infrastructure that's being developed now for the AI in terms of compute power and microchips, and then it's all above my pay grade. So for me, I don't worry too much about that. Okay. I don't really care if Anthropic go bust. Everything that I'm doing at the moment is about owning the parts of the tech stack that are irreplaceable, that I must have for my own security or for my company's security, and then we rent the pieces that we like. So at the moment we're renting Cognition, mostly from Anthropic. We're renting, I suppose, we're using 2 harnesses, I would say, and one of them is Notion, and we're renting that. But in the background, we're building similar sorts of infrastructure that's more open source or proprietary, so that if Notion or Claude ever raise prices by 100x, or if they get the hump and they just shut our account down, it will be a pain in the butt, but it will not be devastation.
And then relating that to the industry, do you think, or what do you think will change in the future in the property real estate world because of AI? Would you think it's everything?
Everything. What's changing now, I think, is that models like Anthropic 4.8 or Fable, which we had a good couple of days with, they're amazing for strategy. First and foremost, if you're a small business owner, being able to kind of have a business partner or a board of advisors or a council of experts that will chat endlessly with you at 3 in the morning or whenever you have a thought, and just help you shape your thinking. That's been the biggest win for me since, certainly since 4.6, Opus 4.6. But then there's like, what about the nuts and what about the operations, the nuts and bolts? For finance, it's getting much better, very fast. It's a language model, so it still struggles with the mathematics. It's hugely better with Excel than it was, but it's still not. I still don't find it capable of doing like really advanced workbooks, logics, and formulas.
Okay.
But it's certainly come on leaps and bounds. But finance, in a way, there's not that many variables. I don't know why, maybe it's because it's mathematics based or something, but you can get jobs like go into Xero, get this month's P&L, pull it down, put it in the management accounts. You can get it to do that now. 10-minute job, it runs on automation, costs basically nothing. Saying that, we use a script for that, not a reasoning model anyway, but you can get it to identify receipts and fill out some data in your payment control system. You can use it to send automatic reminders about missing receipts before end of month close. There's all these little things in finance. Operations is similar. There's more variables in operations. It's more chaotic in the real world, but you can start sort of, I'll give you one example. If someone's got a day of holiday booked in the holiday database, we're running an automation that will check if that person had any standing meetings in the calendar, and it will send everyone an email saying, look, this person's on holiday, scrap that standing meeting. Okay. Again, like, it's 0.001% of what my company does, but I have this theory of like, if you can stack enough of those, ideally it's the 1%. If you can stack 5 1% edges, it makes a really meaningful difference to your appraisals. But if you can stack across a company or a group of companies, across a lifetime of companies, enough of those 0.001s, I just think the productivity gains are going to be phenomenal.
So it's just as simple as putting into it, make me a board game.
No.
So what do you mean by just play around? So
okay.
Do you research about it first and then just put all of these prompts into it to understand more about it?
Yeah, I mean...
Because, like myself, I just put into it something as simple as, you are a professional photographer.
Yep.
Create me an image of XYZ, nice mountains or whatever.
Okay.
That's all I really know about it. I want to get more known for it, and I'm sure a lot of these people as well watching do too. Okay,
I haven't prepared this, but let's just talk openly about it. Think about it. Let's say that you're training a 16-year-old in your company. Let's say that 16-year-old is hyper bright, actually really, really knowledgeable, extremely eager to please, will never say no, but is a little bit mentally unstable.
Right.
Okay. We'll come back to that. So do you just say to that 16-year-old, get me a picture of a mountain in this style, you're a professional photographer now?
Yeah.
No, you say something like, well, what's the context? There's loads of context missing there. Like, why do you want that photo taken? Jocko Willnick, Navy SEALs guy, podcaster, he had this thing about like, don't just tell the squad, point your guns east. Tell them, we think there's a threat in the east, but we're not sure, so point your guns east. And then suddenly you've kind of empowered them with the context of why they're doing something. Right. And is that a threat? Well, he's not sure. Could we identify it as a threat? Should we report there's a possible threat? Do you know what I mean? It's suddenly the minute you have the context, you can be much more useful. that's one type of context. Another would just be like reference materials. Give it 4 photos that you like and say, yeah, this is the style we're going for.
Okay.
And then, yeah, I mean, you know this, the example of the prompt that you gave, you would probably make it twice as long, 3 times as long, with the photographer style, the aspect ratio, what kind of level of realism you want, what color grade, whatever. And then you would go through a series of iterations. And this is where Claude, I think, really gets quite exciting as at entry level. You could sit there for a couple of hours. I mean, Claude's bad for photography, but put that to one side. Let's say you've been having a conversation with it for a couple of hours. So I liked this. Don't do that. That's annoying, etc. So at the end, you just say like, cool, turn that into a skill. You know this.
Turn that into a skill.
So the first great piece of advice is play with it, fiddle around with it. The second great piece of advice, I think, sorry, calling it a great piece of advice, but you know what I mean, the valuable piece of advice. Skills in Claude are a really, really wonderful way to get some ROI on your efforts. You turn it into a skill, it reads the conversation, it observes all the mistakes it made, all the course correction that you've provided, and by the time you've been talking to it for 2 hours, it will have derived the context, even if you haven't given it to it, because you'll be like, no, I want it because, right?
Yeah.
You're doing it all wrong. It's supposed to be. You turn it into a skill, and then forevermore, when you start a similar conversation with it, you can say, activate this skill. And it will come with all of that
already
historic learning. And then you have another 2-hour conversation, and then you say, upgrade the skill.
Okay.
All right? And that's really, really cool. But where it gets super cool is when you get into Claude Code, when you start realizing that you don't really want actual AI agents to do 90% of what you're trying to do. You really want code, script. It's deterministic, it's binary, it doesn't imagine things, it doesn't skip steps, it just does the code until it fails. If you've developed your skill enough, when you get into Claude Code and you say to it, I'd like to turn this into a program, as opposed to an instruction, basically a prompt for an AI, you've effectively got, it then takes 30 minutes to turn some things from an AI probabilistic action into a code-based deterministic action. And that's the thing that you can set loose on your business with more confidence. Wow. So in TLDR, the most exciting thing in the world about AI, apart from solving cancer and educating children, the most exciting thing in the world about AI is not, I think, the armies of agentic, the swarms of agents. The most exciting thing is that AI enables mere mortals like us to build a code base. And if you think about the leverage that business people obtained with the dawning of the age of code, anyone can do it now. Anyone.
Right. Yeah.
Anyone with a bit of curiosity. Sorry.
No. It's just, AI to me is just mad, and it's nice to speak to someone who actually understands it fairly well. Would you say you've got it?
Nah.
No?
Nah, sorry. That would sound terrible on the pod. Nah, I don't got it. I don't understand it. I'm a grotesque vibe coder building a Frankenstein monster of a code base. Every 2 weeks I realize that something that I've gone on a podcast and told everyone is probably wrong. Okay. Or at least I was wrong at the time, or at least it's already out of date.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm an AI expert. I just think all I know is it's starting to work. It's starting to make me move. It's starting to make me move so fast now that the problem is no longer getting the AI to do useful stuff. The problem is now I can't keep up with the amount of useful stuff it generates. I posted about this on my blog, which you will find through my LinkedIn.
I'll tag you below.
Thank you, man. I wrote about this recently because I think one of the interesting things is when you get your setup, when you get the context, when you have at an entry level, when you've got like Claude projects set up and you've got some good skills working in the background, and maybe you're on co-work doing some longer form stuff, maybe you've got some scheduled jobs, you're kind of set up. That's nice. Or the kind of the next level up is when you're, or a different level, let's say, is when you've got your GitHub working, you've got several kind of agentic engineering personalities working for you, building a code base. You've got the basic infrastructure set up. I don't really know what these things are, but you've got your Rails, you've got Cloudflare, you've got some self-hosting, whatever. And you're starting to basically build all the same stuff you could build in Claude, but you're building it mostly outside of Claude, just with Claude's help. At that point, what happens is you can kind of run something overnight or sit down in the morning, and basically by lunchtime, you've got a week's worth of good quality work to review.
Okay.
And then the temptation that I've suffered from, certainly over the last month, is you go, oh, this is amazing. Let me produce another week's worth of work by the evening.
Yeah.
And then you turn around, you suddenly realize, oh my God, like, I can't keep track of all the cool shit I'm building.
Yeah.
I'm not actually finishing, like really finishing it. I'm getting it to 98% or 95%. And I'm not really, I'm not fine tuning it and finishing it. And most importantly, I'm not rolling it out to my team. This is just me playing and experimenting. The company is not seeing the ROI. I might be as an individual contributor, but the highest leverage thing is one individual contributor builds the cool thing, and then 5 people in the team all benefit from it. That's a real force multiplier.
So have you done that before?
Which?
Is there an example of you making some sort of system with Claude code, relaying that out to the team and it having a good benefit on the workflow?
No, I don't think so.
It's all just on benefiting you and your interests at the moment.
Yeah, well, my kind of personal responsibilities in the company.
Yeah.
Going back a step, the principle is sound. I spent several years, kind of before AI arrived, but as soon as the AI turned up, I was like, I need to engineer my data. I spent several years saying, for this company to scale, we're going to have to organize our information. And I built a cathedral in Notion. I do a bit of like Notion consulting on how small businesses can basically nick our templates, and this is rare operations. So we sell the template and we go and hire from the Philippines. I was talking to you about Elle and Jen in the Philippines. We go and hire some offshore labor, and then we set that offshore labor up in the Notion system that we give the company, and we try and help them basically with a fractional operations team sort of thing. All right. I know for a fact that all of that stuff that I built has added hugely to the team's effectiveness. And that was about a shared context layer or data layer, and a shared workspace. Shared situational awareness, interoperability. If one person's on holiday, another person needs to jump in on their workflow, they know exactly where it is, it looks identical to their workflows. And so that was hugely valuable. And we as a company are currently, I spent 4 hours on it today, we are currently, Elle from the Philippines is kind of becoming our, chief engineer, and her and I are trying to crack this problem of sort of the transition from an individual or individuals in the team fiddling around with AI and building cool stuff, and turning that into how do you force multiply it, how do you bring it together? Because one person building a Frankenstein is a problem. 5 people building a Frankenstein together, it's really bad. So we're trying to crack that nut. We're setting up GitHub. We're learning how to basically build an engineering function in-house. Nice. So those types of things that I have built in terms of accountability tracking, calendar management, kind of a thought assistant, some of the processes I've built for managing the Excel documents that we use, some of the stuff for go-to-market, all of that could now, theoretically, quite soon, be rolled out. I'll give you a very simple example.
Yeah.
Very, very simple example. Once upon a time, I wanted a LinkedIn banner. So I went on Canva and spent probably 4 hours of a night trying to build a good LinkedIn banner. A specialist that I work with pointed out to me about a week ago, he said, I know you and I I know that you'll want to know this. And he pointed at my banner and there was a spelling mistake on it. So the quote was, Charlie Munger, take a simple idea and treat it seriously. And I'd written treat is seriously at 3 in the morning after 4 hours of fiddling around with Canva.
Okay.
So cool, no problem. I went into Claude Design, told it what I wanted, showed it the old one, said just make this good. Done. Perfect. First time.
That quick. Yeah.
Took 30 seconds. And then I said, obviously I had to give it the kind of brand assets to piece it together, but fine. And then I said, cool, make that a skill. So now it's a skill. So when we finish this job of kind of building an accessible, controlled, shared, permissioned code base that we all can work in, at that point you can say to everyone in the team, guys, sometime this week, can you just run that skill, grab a couple of brand assets, pick a quote you like, run that skill, and everyone update their banners. It's tiny, it's 0.01%, but it adds up. And once we crack all of these tiny, tiny little use cases, we will have developed all the skills to build the AI that looks at a brochure for a building and tells you what it's probably worth. Or, you know.
So that's your future plans with it all, is to make your own agent to help you in your work instead of just using Claude and things like that.
Yeah, we're building on OpenClaw as well.
Yeah.
So I've got something called Origins. You get it?
Yeah.
I wanted to call the AI Mother after Alien, but everyone said that's weird. We're building Origins. That is going to be the kind of coordinating AI personality that will work with swarms where appropriate, if Claude ever start charging what they really should charge. And this is the third like value bomb I want to give to anyone listening who isn't already bored of listening to me. I'm a terrible podcast guest. What I was going to say, this. It's that Claude, Anthropic, is the best company I've ever come across in terms of the value for money, what they let you have.
Yeah.
It will not last much longer, and it will be supremely expensive to try and build your foundations and learn AI when they jack the prices up 10x.
Right.
So while the prices are unbelievably subsidized, which they currently are, this is the time to just be brute forcing your way into building some foundations so that when the price goes up, you're not figuring out the basics.
Interesting. So by the prices being cheap, do you mean it's that £20 a month subscription, or is it more expensive than that?
So if you start going ham on it, you will burn the £20 a month quite quickly. 180 is the next level up, and you have to go some to kill that, even now when I'm kind of maxing Claude Code. I know that you hear about like the guys with 1,000 agents running on 12 servers, and you know, I go quite hard on it. 4 or 5 hours a day, and I'm now at the point where I'm using sort of like swarms, I guess, multiple sessions, like multiple sprints, building different things all at the same time with a specialist session that's monitoring everything and a specialist session that's helping me troubleshoot. And I still struggle to burn the £180 a month. But for context, I think if I were on the enterprise plan, or if I was paying for those tokens on a token usage basis, I think that I would be spending thousands of pounds a month, probably considerable thousands of pounds a month.
Yeah.
So it is unbelievably subsidized at the moment.
Wow. So you mentioned there you spend about 4 to 5 hours a day on it. So what does the typical day-to-day look like for you? What time do you wake up? What do you do? And then what time do you shut off?
So I have a young child, and we wake up at between 5 and 7, and we party, and we try and do some press ups or whatever, but you know, probably just drink coffee and stare with exhaustion at my bubbling brook of a enthusiastic child. I go to work at about 7 to try and get ahead of the day, because obviously once the day starts, you're putting out fires. So I try to get to work for 7:30. I try and get a couple of hours in the morning on my stuff. Around about 10, the day really gets going and people start dropping nukes on your desk, and you spend the rest of the day trying to problem solve, which is great. And then usually when it begins, if it's a calm day and it begins to calm down again around 4 when everyone clocks off, that's when I try and squeeze another couple of hours of systems building in, working on the company instead of in the company. And then I try and get home for bath time, see the missus, and around about, I mean, I'm ashamed to admit it, she would say to me, go marry Claude. Around about the time that she decides to read a book or watch some TV, I'm straight back at it, and I'll often go sort of 9 p.m., 10 p.m. until midnight or 1, kind of playing.
Just messing around with it.
Yeah.
Wow, and then restart again at 5 to 7.
I'll say something real in case it's interesting. I have this thought that, like, it's basically I have this thought, maybe I'll catch some shade for this, but I have this thought that it's like impossible to be a truly excellent entrepreneur and a truly excellent father. And the caveat, the immediate caveat is I think you can be great at both. But I just don't know. I mean, the sacrifices that you have to make to build a good business and the sacrifices that you have to make to always be there for your kid when they need you, so that they have that emotional security. It's not necessarily being on top of them all the time, but being around, being there. There aren't enough hours in the day. And so I'll say, I don't know, in case it helps anyone, I'll say it honestly, like I feel guilt about that because my self-identity is very tied into the work, my professional life and the work that I'm trying to achieve. And there's a part of me that would love to leave for the office at 8:30 and leave the office at 5 and not work the evenings and not work weekends, so that I could be more present. But I suppose then the actual way to square that circle is work-life balance. I think is what I'm reflecting on lately. Work-life balance is not about living in balance. It's about a life in balance. So I kind of think these are the years, your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, where you go absolutely ham on trying to build the things you're trying to build and add the value and give more than you take. And then your 50s are for slowing down a bit, your 60s and your 70s are for spending more time. And the problem with that is if you don't balance it right, your kids are grown up and kind of think you weren't around very much. Anyway, that's something I'm grappling with. It's hard.
No, look, I'm afraid we're going to have to wrap up. I could honestly speak to you and listen to your stories for hours upon end. But of everything we've spoken about today, if you could just pick one piece of advice that you would give to everyone watching these videos now, what would it be?
Oh, it's the billboard question.
I
love
it. Every episode.
One piece of advice. Most of the time, two things are true at once.
Nice. Any expansion on that?
I think if you know, you know, and you'll find out.
Perfect. All
I
right.
think I'll leave it there.
That was Edward Freeman. Thank you very, very much.
Thanks for having me, man. I enjoyed it. Good luck with everything.
Thank you.